Hey guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's simply the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor by Spotify has everything you need all in one place. So let me explain. Now, Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your own cell phone or your own computer. Now, I've been using and loving Anchor by Spotify for 2 years now. And don't forget that Anchor will go ahead and distribute your podcast on so many listening platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and so many, many more. Now, I think it's simply everything you need to make your own podcast, all in one place. And don't forget, Anchor is totally free. So why don't you go ahead and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I can't wait to hear all of your podcasts. Hey everyone, welcome back to all my listeners. And if it's your first time finding me, thank you so much and welcome. Come on in, you guys. This is episode 11 of my 7th season. Today is Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. Now, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to my good friend, Kimberly Jolivet Williams. Her annual Business of Healthcare Colloquium was a huge success this past weekend. We had a great lineup of speakers that provided huge content, huge education, and huge opportunities for growth and networking. I'm giving her some breathing room for now before I invite her back onto my podcast. She really did go above and beyond putting this fabulous event together. Anyways, you guys, all right. Now, let me start unpacking the day. So I'm going to be diving into my compliance tips and my compliance recommendations today on the 3 new G codes for telehealth home health agencies. And it's finally time for me to unroll that red carpet. I know you guys are like, is she going to ever unroll that red carpet? But yes, she is today. Today's the day. I have two very fabulous guests from Penstock with me today. Their names are Laura Collier and Chris Gallagher that I interview on this very special Newsworthy. And I go ahead and round out today's episode with a remarkable quote on purpose and impact by Eleanor Roosevelt. If you've checked me out on LinkedIn, you know I'm all about compliance and protecting our physicians and our valued healthcare professionals when it comes to the business of medicine. I hope this week with me brings you enough to take back to your organizations, to want to dive in deeper, to use my tips and best practices to ensure success. I hope this podcast will help you boost the quality of documentation capture and improve coding accuracy as you help all of your providers paint the medical picture. If you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss another episode. Please write in a review and kindly drop me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to my podcast. I'd really love your support. And as always, a friendly disclaimer. Remember, I'm bringing you the news, current healthcare industry news, my compliance tips and my recommendations based on my over 12 years of experience in front office, in back end, in coding, and in billing for multi-specialty physicians, in compliance, and in auditing for both E&M and surgical operative reports. These are my opinions alone and are not to be construed as legal advice. So, let's get into a very special Newsworthy that features my guests today. I've got 2 of them, Laura Collier and Chris Gallagher. I'm so excited for today's session with both of you. So why don't I start by diving into the bio of Laura Collier. Now, Laura joined Penstock in 2021 as Chief Operating Officer and was promoted to President of Penstock in 2022. She is responsible for the development and implementation of key strategies, policies, and business initiatives focused on continuous improvement, client success, product development, and strategic growth opportunities. Her 20 years of experience in various payment integrity roles supporting large healthcare organizations has allowed Laura to thrive in the startup environment of Penstock. Understanding that payment is one of the foundational systems of healthcare that is broken and needs reinvention, Laura leads the team's commitment to reimagine the way care is paid for and to reclaim greater integrity between payers and providers. Through her leadership, Laura oversees the management of new program development, facilitates partnerships, and participates in the development of long-range strategic plans and objectives for the business. Laura has proven ability to successfully implement strategies and standardize models to create client results. She is an accomplished strategic thinker driven by a best practice approach that creates revenue, cost reductions, and improved workflows for clients, and overall increased client satisfaction. Wow, that's a huge bio. That's amazing. Incredible, Laura. Now, why don't I move on quickly to Chris Gallagher's bio? Now, Chris is the VP of Penstock. For over 3 decades, Chris has worked with medical coding, clinical documentation, and healthcare reimbursement from every angle: payer, provider, and auditor. Now, before joining Penstock, Chris was the director of the inpatient audit and edit development teams at CGI, where she tripled recoveries while working 40% fewer audits. Chris holds a master's degree in philosophy. She's taught medical ethics to university nursing students, and she served on the medical ethics board at Toledo Hospital. Chris is currently serving as an AHIMA mentor and is a member of the 2021 AHIMA Professional Ethics Committee, as well as the 2021 Long-Term Post-Acute Care Clinical Documentation Integrity Task Force. As VP of Delivery for Penstock, Chris is committed to fair, accurate, transparent, and efficient healthcare reimbursement. She and her team help clients identify and overcome barriers to proper payment and adopt standards and practices that promote critical thinking and continuous improvement. Oh my goodness, Laura and Chris, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Those bios for both of you are simply impressive, and I'm so honored to have you both on my podcast.
We are honored to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I can't wait for my audience to know more about you, right? So I know my audience would love to learn more about your journeys. So why don't we go ahead and dive into my first set of questions for both of you? So, all right, let's dive right into those journeys. How did each of you wind up at this fascinating startup, right? With all of your decades of experience in larger organizations, what inspired you to take that leap of faith from working those years in standard operations, right? And what is it? Do tell us. What is it that makes Penstock unique?
I'll start first. So just a little bit of background on Penstock. Penstock is a payment integrity and reimbursement consulting group. It was founded with a mission to eliminate unnecessary health costs and ensure that all stakeholders are fairly compensated and accurately compensated. The team, we have decades of subject matter expertise in federal, state, and commercial programs. And we're focusing on developing unique approaches and innovative non-traditional audit recoveries for both payers and providers. Penstock belongs to Goodroot, which is a community of companies. Goodroot provides a deeply rooted network of solutions, insight, influence, and resources that we can tap into. And all of those are dedicated to helping reinvent healthcare one system at a time. So Chris and I have a history. We've worked together in previous job in the payment integrity space. We did work for a large corporate organization along with a gentleman, Jeff Snyder. Jeff is our vice president of operations. We would all travel together to client meetings, and one evening we were discussing the bureaucracy that we faced daily in the larger organizations, and we had long delays in getting things done. So we struggled meeting client requirements. And as we were talking one evening, we thought it would be nice if we could start up our own company one day. And we wanted to focus on providing outstanding client service and doing the right thing for our clients. So it was probably a year later, I left that organization and went to another payment integrity organization. Jeff and Chris left at a later date. But prior to that, Jeff met with Mike Waterbury, who's the CEO of Goodroot, and he pitched the idea of Penstock. Not long after that, Jeff and Chris founded Penstock under the Goodroot umbrella, and I joined them 9 months later. I joined, as you mentioned, in June of 2021. We've had some phenomenal growth. The day that I joined, it was Jeff, Chris, myself, and another gentleman. And since then, we've grown from 4 team members to 18, and we're anticipating additional growth over the next several months. We've been developing our pipeline, and we have a lot of great opportunities where we're taking on some unique approaches in this space. So a lot of great stuff going on. But just the fact that we kind of were moving into an organization where we truly could make a difference in the space that we're working in, with the way everything has kind of come to fruition, we thought now is the time for us to kind of take this leap of faith, and it's certainly paid off. Chris, did you want to talk about your journey?
Well, I think you really covered a lot of it. You know, we really wanted to do something different. We wanted to have the freedom to make things right instead of just capitalizing on mistakes that are chronically being made and the same things over and over again we see all the time. We wanted to try to help stop that instead of feeding off of it. And so Jeff and Laura and I thought we could do this. So what better time than during the pandemic?
Exactly. No, I loved hearing that because, yeah, with decades of experience in healthcare, you see where the gaps are, right? And when there's that establishment that's already laid out, it's hard to make change. It's hard to make those improvements happen. So I love hearing that story that the brain children, right? All of you have worked together for so long that you kind of, could whisper amongst yourselves what changes you could see happen, right? Without this establishment in front of you, right? That kind of served as a barricade, right? So you freed yourselves up and started up this new organization. I love hearing that. Now, let's move on to my second question, right? I just wanted to say that having you both on today is ever so timely for me because for the past few months, there's been this buzz around the certified medical coding community that they've been feeling threatened, right? That there's this concept, I think it's a long established concept of AI, right? Artificial intelligence. I prefer the term augmented intelligence. And this idea that AI is going to be taking away the jobs of our certified medical coders has raised its ugly head once again. So I think having you two experts on in this particular field of AI is going to really, I hope, help extinguish this idea that we simply won't have jobs anymore, because I don't think this is necessarily true, but I would really like to pick your brains and hear what your thoughts are, right? And alongside that, I know you guys have written a rather fabulous article back in June of 2022 in ICD-10 Monitor that regards this matter specifically. So if we have time, I'd love for you to get into that article as well.
Chris, I'll let you take this one first.
Okay, because Laura will talk about your article.
Yep.
But the whole subject of automating coding is something I feel so passionately about, because I consider coding to be like the translation of physician documentation into the language of the code set, into ICD-10. And it's so much more than just taking keywords and attaching numbers to them. It's, interpreting and understanding and, second guessing sometimes, trying to, physician documentation is imperfect a lot of the time. And so we really want to, a coder needs to be able to understand when they need to reach out for more information and when things need to be clarified. And I just can't see a machine being able to do that translation the way a human being can. And so I don't think coders have anything to worry about. And from our point of view, the things that we see, we audit a lot of claims that have that are the result of computer assisted coding, and we find a lot of mistakes.
Right.
Because the computer really is looking for keywords and attaching codes to them. And there's just so much more to what we do.
Right. And the article just kind of dived into that a bit, right? So, physicians are required to understand and document what is actually occurring when they're in the facility working with the patient. Artificial intelligence, as Chris mentions, it can focus on keywords and specific codes, but it's not able to interpret the human aspect of that. Right. So, we feel that it has its place, and there are scenarios where you can use it to do data mining to pick up, coding errors and when there's really no gray matter in the circumstance. But, you really need that human interaction in order to determine, what the situation truly was. Any gray areas where you're needing to clarify the situation. You're needing auditors that can actually take a look at it based on experiences that they've had, based on their own interactions with physicians and things of that nature. They're able to come to an agreement. So from our perspective, we don't use AI 100%. We're not going to ever. We feel that it's necessary to have that human intelligence as part of your process. So that's just kind of what the article speaks to. And, just based on our experience, we have years in the industry. That's the way that we've always operated.
Right. Okay. So let me ask a more pointed question. So hearing you both talk right now, do you have more firsthand knowledge of, is this AI type of software utilized more in the payer setting, or is it used more in the provider setting currently in 2022?
I think in the provider setting for the computer assisted coding type of thing.
For the CAC type of coding, which we've had for decades, right? We've had that technology for a very long time. Has it advanced at all, or is it still kind of the same, right? You hinted at, you see errors all the time when that CAC technology is being used. Has it improved? Has it made a difference in the physician side of things?
I think we probably look more from the facility side of things, but I don't know that it still requires human intervention for sure to take out the things that don't belong, and somebody needs to go in there and apply the rules to see what actually needs to be reported.
Exactly.
So, but I know that I think payers are using it. Laura, is this for their own auditing, when their internal auditing efforts?
You see that a lot. They're using it in that, they're using it for that. And then you also have a lot of the payment integrity vendors like us that utilize that.
Got it.
We've been coming in behind a lot of those vendors and that use these tools on a consistent basis. And our findings rates are still pretty high. So that lets us know that, while they have made improvements with the tools themselves, and you're starting to see, that you're able to complete data mining efforts more quickly. They're still leaving error, there's still errors that are being left behind that, we're still picking up. So I think it still has a way to go before it can be, I don't know that it's ever going to be something that can be solely relied upon, but it can be used to augment what you're currently doing. It's just that, like I said, we continue to see errors when we're coming in behind those vendors that there are a few that rely pretty heavily on those types of tools.
All right. That's absolutely wonderful. Wonderful insights from both of you. Now, thank you. My colleagues can go to sleep at ease, knowing that their jobs are secure and AI is not going to take them away. So thank you. Thank you. Now, let's move on to my third question, right? I want to hear more about your experience in your work, specifically for your clients, both of your provider clients as well as your payer clients, right? Obviously, you can speak in as vague of generalities as possible, please. What is it that you do to help guide these types of organizations towards optimal payment realization, as well as payment integrity with recovery when that's necessary? Now, I suspect that you, Chris, in particular, you're the one who's integral to the provider side of optimal reimbursement strategy for your clients with your credentials of the CCS as well as the CDIP. I know my audience would love to know more.
One of the main focuses for me right now is on the coding at the skilled nursing facility, and I think it's a place where coding is so important, but it's because of the change to the new payment model. I think they kind of decided that since the reimbursement was coming from somewhere other than the claim, that we didn't really need coders anymore. And I think that it's so wrong because the model is now really based on diagnoses instead of therapy minutes. So you really, really need a coder in there interpreting the medical record documentation and getting the clarification that's required to support the billing, which totally isn't happening right now. And so one thing we did was to make a documentation guide for SNFs, for skilled nursing facilities, to tell them, here, as auditors, here's what we're looking at. Here's what we're going to be doing. Here is what you need to have in place in order to not have things taken back from on your claim. So I don't think that a lot of auditing companies will tell the provider in advance, here's how we're going to be doing this audit. And so prepare yourself by understanding what the documentation requirements are, how the coding rules apply, and all that stuff. And so I think that's one way we're trying to get in there to the provider community to help prepare for this payment model to be audited and for them to have what they need to support what they're billing.
Well, and a couple of the other things that we're doing. So, as we go in and audit and we identify trends and things of that nature, reporting is extremely important, right? So we have reporting for both providers and payers. We meet with the payers to walk through any trends that we're identifying. And, we'll meet with the provider community as well. It's not uncommon for us to schedule meetings where we'll walk through what we're seeing in their data and have open discussions on what it is that we're finding and what they can do to potentially correct issues. If they have concerns, we do have auditors, nurses, we have nurses and coders and physicians that will meet with them to walk through what concerns they have. And, just to have an open level of discussion that you don't typically see in the industry. So, we're about education and trying to fix things systemically instead of constantly over and over trying to identify low-hanging fruit that result in revenue. Revenue chasing is a lot of what you see in this industry. Yes. And our goal is to change it permanently because there's always going to be issues, right? And, exactly. Our goal is to actually help make that change.
I love that. I love hearing that because that's exactly what so many of the proactive educators are trying to do. So I like that our thoughts align very, very nicely. All right. Now, this sounds like an incredible startup organization trying to do the right thing, right, for both payers and providers simultaneously, utilizing the data that's out there for good, right? So, in my last question to you both today is a familiar one, right? It's often used for people, but I'm going to shift it over to Penstock as an organization today. So, where do you see Penstock in this landscape of healthcare in the next 5 years? And how will each of you serve as key players to taking it there?
Okay, so I'll start first. So our focus overall, as I've mentioned, is to disrupt the healthcare payment integrity industry. There's a lot of complexity and lack of transparency that leads to billing errors that are either never identified or they occur repeatedly. We're focusing on making a study of those chronic problems that we identify and addressing them at the source. Over the course of the past year, our team has developed a software tool called ClearBridge. This is our own proprietary and purpose-built technology created by and for payment integrity teams. It's based on the team's collective experience of issues that we've dealt with when, we've utilized technology. So we are utilizing this tool currently internally with our audit team, and we'll be releasing this out into the market next year. As I mentioned, it's an audit management technology that manages our audit workflow. And then we will be continuing to add more functionality to that tool. We're also working with clients on different compensation models outside of the standard contingency fee arrangements. We're trying to veer away from that as much as possible because I think that rewards the same type of behavior that you're used to seeing, where you just have these audit companies coming in and auditing over and over. We're helping companies to evaluate their existing payment integrity structures and to make recommendations for improvement. One of the things that includes is reviewing the edits that they have and helping them to improve them. You don't see a lot of that either because businesses are not wanting to give away the secret sauce. And we're like, well, anybody can back map to that edit if they sit down to figure it out. So, we're taking the approach of we want to come in and help you improve that. We'll evaluate your existing parameters and help you refine those. So we're also, I mentioned earlier that we're working closely with both payers and providers to help provide education and training on any trends that we're noting so that systemic changes can be made. And then, I also mentioned that we're part of GoodRoot. GoodRoot is an ecosystem of companies that reinvent healthcare. They do it on the pharmacy and the medical side. Our goal is to help provide access to an even wider net of experts in the industry to remove waste from the healthcare system overall. We want to return dollars to payers. We want to create lower medical costs and then increase access for all patients. We have, as you know, a big issue in the industry where healthcare is not necessarily affordable. So GoodRoot is always on the lookout for healthcare entrepreneurs and professionals who want to join this cause. So, we would look for folks to reach out if they're interested in that as well, to join the team. Chris, is there anything else you want to add?
Well, I would just want to say that I hope in 5 years that the ClearBridge technology that Laura's mentioned, that we maybe can help prevent errors to begin with by turning it into a claims processing platform not just auditing. So if we're able to use our know-how that we apply to auditing to getting those claims paid the first time, that maybe that's one area we could eliminate a lot of mistakes right off the top, and also have auditing tools built into it. So if we could take out some errors that way, that would be ideal.
So I love hearing this built-in technology idea that you can have a built-in feature for the auditing. All of these things that you're talking about with your product sound incredible to me. So I love hearing it. And I can't wait to see what happens to Penstock then in the next 5 years, and that both of you are going to be a big part of it. So I love it. I love it. You guys were incredible. Yeah, incredible insights on what is going on. So I love it.
Thanks for allowing us to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you know what? Before you guys go, would you mind if I share your details? I don't know if anybody in my audience is going to know where to find you. So could I share Penstock information on my show notes, or where they could find both of you on social media?
Absolutely. You can certainly share our LinkedIn profiles. I'm out there, Laura Collier, Chris Gallagher. Listeners can also follow the Penstock page as well.
Great. Okay.
Our website is penstockgroup.com. We are very active on LinkedIn, so you'll see that our marketing team is continuously putting information out there. And then you can also find GoodRoot at goodrootinc.com, and that's goodrootinc.com. Both websites have news sections where we publish a bit of information about trends in the industry. So LinkedIn and our websites are the good place to go for that.
All right. Well, that's perfect. I'll make sure I put all of those details in my show notes. Love it. Now, before you guys have to go, is there anything that we missed in our conversation today that you'd like to share with my audience?
No, I think we've covered a lot. I really appreciate your giving us this opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys were a pleasure to have on, and I can't wait to have you back in the future so we can hear what's going on with Penstock. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So in today's compliance tip, I wanted to dive into the 3 new HCPCS codes for telehealth for home health agencies. Now, there's been an MLN Matters that was issued on November 10th, and it alerts us to make sure that our billing staff knows about 3 new G codes for home health agency telecommunications technology claims and these reporting requirements. Now, they alert us that we may voluntarily report these 3 new G codes starting on January 1, 2023. But we absolutely must be reporting these 3 new G codes if they're applicable services starting on July 1, 2023. Let's go over some background. Now, in calendar year 2019, the HH Prospective Payment System, the HCPCS final rule with comment was released. Now, CMS finalized the definition of remote patient monitoring in regulations at 42 CFR 409.46E as the collection of physiologic data, which means electrocardiogram, blood pressure, and glucose monitoring, digitally stored or transmitted by the patient or caregiver to the home health agency, the HHA. Now, let's remember that the first COVID-19 public health emergency, the PHE, interim final rule with comment period, implemented additional policies under the HHPPS to make providing and receiving services via telecommunications technology easier. Now, the plan of care must describe how technology is tied to the patient's specific needs in the comprehensive assessment. Now, the amended plan of care requirements in 42 CFR 409.43A also state that these services can't substitute for a home visit ordered as part of the plan of care. Also, they cannot be considered a home visit for the purposes of patient eligibility or payment per Section 1895E 1A and B of the Social Security Act. Now, the calendar year 2021 HHPPS final rule with comment period finalized these changes on a permanent basis. Now, it also amended 42 CFR 409.46E to include not only remote patient monitoring, but other communication or monitoring services consistent with the plan of care for the individual on the home health cost report as allowable administrative costs. Today, data collection on telecommunications technology use is limited to overall cost data on a broad category of telecommunications services as a part of an HHA's administrative costs on line 5 of the Home Health Agency's Medicare cost reports. Now, data on telecommunications technology use during a 30-day period of care at the patient level isn't currently collected on the home health claim. While the provision of services provided via a telecommunications system must be in the patient's plan of care, CMS doesn't routinely review plans of care to determine the extent that these services were actually provided. Collecting data on the telecommunications technology use on home health claims will allow CMS to do these 2 things. Number 1, to analyze the characteristics of patients using services provided remotely. And number 2, have a broader understanding of the social determinants of health that affect those who benefit the most from these types of services, including what barriers may potentially exist for certain subsets of patients. Starting on or after January 1, 2023, you may voluntarily report the use of telecommunications technology in providing home health services on home health payment claims. Now, CMS will require this information on home health claims starting on July 1st, 2023. Now, be mindful to submit the use of telecommunications technology on those home health claims using these 3 new G codes. Now, the first new G code is HCPCS code G0320, which is defined as home health services furnished using synchronous telemedicine rendered via a real-time, two-way audio and video telecommunications system. The second new HCPCS code is G0321, which is defined as home health services furnished using synchronous telemedicine rendered via telephone or other real-time interactive audio-only telecommunications system. And finally, the third new HCPCS code is G0322, which is defined as the collection of physiologic data digitally stored and or transmitted by the patient to the home health agency, for example, remote patient monitoring. Now, the MLN also tells us to report the use of remote patient monitoring that spans a number of days as a single line item, showing the start date of monitoring as well as the number of days of monitoring in the unit's field. They also advise that you will submit services provided via telecommunications technology in line item detail. They also advise that you can report each service as a separate dated line under the appropriate revenue code for each discipline providing the service. And be mindful that you must document the medical record to show how the telecommunications technology helps to achieve the goals outlined on the plan of care. And finally, I focus Season 7 Spark on purpose and impact. I want this 7th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires the need for purpose and impact in all we strive to do. So, in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Eleanor Roosevelt. The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience. Absolutely true, right? I think this is an amazing quote that reminds us to live our life fully. I think this quote reminds us that we all need to stride forward with our lives. This quote inspires us to never be afraid of that most basic, that most fundamental purpose to our lives, to simply live them. I think this quote reminds us that we should embrace every new, every rich opportunity life has in store for all of us. I think this quote enables us to then leave our own legacy of impact behind. I am happy Eleanor Roosevelt's spark still burns brightly in all of us today. So that wraps up today's episode. And as always, I appreciate you all diving into today with me. If you want more information from me, please go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes below. And in my last thoughts today, remember, World Kindness Day just passed us by on Sunday, but it should not be just a singular day of kindness, should it? We should spread our kindness each and every day because we really do not know what each and every person we meet is carrying around. Their bags may be very, very heavily packed. They may be too scared to show us what they're dealing with, what baggage and what burdens are weighing heavy on them each and every day. And make sure you take the time to be kind to yourselves as well. Mistakes happen, milk spills, words are said. There is nothing that cannot be fixed and healed and forgiven. So please be kind to yourselves as well and allow that light to enter yourselves once again. Thank you all so much for listening in on today's very special episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.